true, Judge. It's new.
Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. Welcome to the February 4th, 2020 meeting of the Whitehall City Council for the purpose of considering such matters that become before us. I'd like first of all to please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Coniston.
Present.
Cantor.
Present.
Peck.
Present.
Morrison.
Present.
Bailey.
Present.
Rodriguez.
Present.
Elmore.
Present.
President Bonner.
Present. At this time, I'll accept a motion for the approval of the minutes of January 21st, 2020.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the January 21st minutes.
Second.
I've had a first by Ms. Coniston, second by Mr. Cantor. Clerk, please call roll.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, it's the first poll public of the evening. Invite people to step forward and please give your name and address for the record. You have up to 3 minutes to speak. Would anybody like to come forward this evening? Hearing none, we'll now go to standing committee reports. Administration and Financial Management, Chairperson Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Administration and Financial Management did meet last Tuesday. Our minutes are on file, and as usual, Julie did a tremendous job on those minutes. I hope everybody has reviewed them. And we will meet again next Tuesday sometime after 6:30.
Thank you. Community and Elder Advocacy, Chairperson Elmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Community and Elder Advocacy did meet on Tuesday. We have no drafts or pending legislation. Our minutes are on file. We will meet again next Tuesday in the back, about 6:30.
Thank you. Community Standards and Enforcement, Chairperson Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Community Standards and Enforcement also met last Tuesday. Our minutes are on file. We'll meet next Tuesday sometime after 6:30.
Thank you. Economic Development, Chairperson Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Economic Development also met last Tuesday. Our minutes are on file, and we'll meet again next Tuesday sometime after 6:30 in the back.
Thank you. Infrastructure, Maintenance, and Services, Chairperson Heck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Infrastructure, Maintenance, and Services met last Tuesday. Our minutes are on file. We have no drafts or pending legislation, and we will meet next Tuesday sometime after 6:30 in the back.
Thank you. Public Safety, Chairperson Coniston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Safety met last week. Our minutes are on file, and we'll meet again in the back sometime after 6:30 on Tuesday.
Thank you. And last but not least, Parks and Recreation, Chairperson Cantor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Parks and Recreation also met last week. Our minutes are on file, and we'll meet again next week in the back after 6:30.
Very good. Officials reports. Mayor Kim Maggard.
Hi, I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. I have no report.
Thank you. City Attorney, Michael Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. From the City Attorney's Office, in the month of January, Mayor's Court, we handled 230 cases. Out of those 230 cases, only 21 of those were committed by Whitehall residents, which is 9%. And just for your benefit, Mr. President, when I kind of delineate the cases that are Whitehall residents, those cases tend to be cases that are property crimes, thefts, things that are of a more serious nature. So I delineate those out, and only 21 of those 230 cases were committed by Whitehall residents. And that's City Attorney's report.
Good information. Thank you. City Auditor Dan Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no official report tonight. I would like to ask for favorable consideration on ordinance number 7 and resolutions 2 and 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of Development and Public Service, Mr. Woodruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually do have an official report this evening, if I could so indulge you. I did want to take a couple minutes to go over the legislation that has been widely talked about, Ordinance 02 and Ordinance 03. For folks who are watching at home, I apologize that you will not be able to see the slides that I have up at council. However, they are available on our website on the homepage for anyone who would like them. So, as we've talked about this legislation, I've obviously spoken with a number of you council members, and so the first question that has been asked is, are we doing what is legal? Are we doing what's right? Are we violating people's civil liberties? And the answer, quite frankly, is no, we are not violating anyone's civil rights or civil liberties or the Constitution. In fact, the U.S. Supreme Court in California versus Carraro specifically addresses this issue. What a person chooses to voluntarily expose to the public view loses Fourth Amendment protection, meaning that if you put things out in your rear yard in public or plain view as it's considered, then it is not subject to the same privacy as it would if it was inside your house. If it was inside your house, yes, we would need a warrant. But if it is in a yard, then we do not need a warrant. This issue is in many central Ohio communities that prohibit the parking of vehicles on the grass. Again, Columbus, Reynoldsburg, Bexley, Gahanna, Hilliard, Westerville, Grove City, Dublin, Upper Arlington. There are additional communities that have different regulations. Most of those communities have well-established in a number of homeowners associations, HOAs, so the city doesn't need to regulate it because the HOAs regulate it. The idea that you can do whatever you want in your backyard, especially if you have a privacy fence, is also not something that is based in fact. We have existing Whitehall zoning code that presently regulates a number of issues in people's backyards, whether it's weeds and tall grass, litter and trash, swimming pools, barking dogs. A number of you were on council when the conversation about farm animals and livestock. We regulate people owning roosters in their rear yards. So we regulate all kinds of things. And I know that the idea that I can do whatever I want on my property is something that people like to say. However, if your neighbor wanted to open up a tire recycling plant in their yard, we would have regulations against that. So that is the purpose of having regulations. By all means, people are free and allowed to own property in this country. Absolutely, no question about that. How you utilize that property is in fact something that is regulated by the government, whether that be federal, state, or local. In fact, if you wanted to start burning tires in your backyard tomorrow, there would be no less than 4 to 6 agencies on a federal and state level that would tell you to stop. So you're not just free to do whatever you want in your rear yard. Because you can't have really tall grass in your backyard. Because you can't have trash in your backyard. These are the things that we regulate currently in people's backyards, and these are some of the issues that we've had. So there's also been a question about how we will enforce this. So I can tell you that the Service Department plans to enforce this the same way we enforce all of the other codes. So our code enforcement officers begin when a potential violation is either seen from the right-of-way or the road, or from a resident complaint. So if we can see the violation from the potential violation from the right-of-way, or with permission from a neighbor from the neighbor's property, we have then a right to document that potential violation. So the pictures you just saw either came from the fact that we could see the violation from the road, or that we got permission from the neighbor. For this particular code section, because I know again this has been a particular point that I've heard is circulating, the Code Enforcement Department may utilize additional tools following a complaint. So public record images from the Franklin County Auditor or web-based aerial pictures such as Google Earth. But again, that is just after we have observed a possible violation on a complaint that we received from a neighbor or from the street. Because we also understand that those pictures typically are dated 2 to 3 years. We are also going to then check with the building department to see if any additional building permits have been obtained and work done, that maybe there is an improved surface that, again, did not show up in any of our other means of investigation. It is at that time that we will issue a notice of violation if those things did not occur. So again, it's no different than us becoming aware of these issues. We certainly are not going to sit and use Google Earth to fly up and down every street in Whitehall looking for these violations. I've also heard the question of, well, doesn't current code address this? So I would point you to this picture. While we have current code that would certainly, regulate the tall grass, and we have regulation that speaks to having the car, maybe with the blue tarp, be considered junk or inoperable, the rest of the vehicles do not violate current code. There's also been, again, going back to these aerial photos, there's also been an accusation, assumption that, again, we're only using Google Earth or the Franklin County Auditor's website. The reason I showed City Council those pictures a number of weeks ago was merely to demonstrate to you how bad the problem is. So I'll point to this picture. There's nothing illegal, there's nothing wrong with this in code. But I also don't know that this picture really gives you a sense of how bad it is. I would want you, by the way, when I go to the next picture, to just keep your eye on the yellow bus, because it's still there in the aerial photo from a number of years ago. I was merely showing you that there's a difference when you look at it like this picture, which I don't think really gives you the full scope of how bad it is until you go to the aerial. I was in no means suggesting that we were only going to use these aerial photos as a way to crack down if this code is enforced. That's not our goal. It was to merely demonstrate a problem. Same thing here. You look at this picture from the neighbor and you think, oh, okay, well, all right, well, I don't know, it doesn't look so bad. Except when you pull up the aerial and you realize it's 19 cars. Same thing here. I know I talked to a number of you about this picture. And again, the idea here is that we want to, it wasn't that great and the neighbor shouldn't have to look at it. But again, you go to the aerial, now you can see all the stuff in the vehicles behind the car. Again, the goal was not to only use the aerials, but was in fact to show you the difference in perspective. So the resident who was here a number of weeks ago, that was the feature of the Whitehall News, was concerned that he was going to have to come into compliance on this issue. The fact of the matter is, he is grandfathered by the very nature of how his house is set up. He has a gravel driveway. We allow for grandfathered gravel driveways. But years ago, the city and city council determined that the minimum standard for new driveways in Whitehall was either asphalt or concrete. We don't allow new gravel driveways. So the resident who was here, his house doesn't really have a backyard. It almost entirely backs up to the alley. All of his vehicles that he was so concerned about and that he thought he was going to have to spend $7,000 on a driveway are parked either on a concrete parking pad or in his gravel driveway, both of which would be grandfathered. In fact, our current code allows for that. He has all of his vehicles in the side or in the front. None of them are in the back. And so what's interesting is we actually had gone over to his house and talked to him about what this legislation actually does and doesn't do, and now he has a completely different understanding about what we're trying to regulate because he is grandfathered. People with gravel driveways are allowed to repair and allowed to fix and maintain their gravel driveway. But if you have a concrete driveway and you want to go to gravel, well, we don't allow that. I think this council, and I think the majority of you, are not going to hear from many residents who are in favor of this ordinance. Because many of the residents that call code enforcement for every issue, many of them don't want to be identified because they don't want conflict with their neighbors. And I'm in no way trying to suggest of a physical altercation, but they don't want any conflict with their neighbors. They don't want to be the person who their neighbor is mad at because they called code enforcement. So you're not going to hear from the vast majority of residents who I think will be in favor of this. And I would also end with improving quality of life for residents is in fact one of our jobs. It's the reason we don't allow dogs to bark for more than 15 minutes. We don't make the argument, well, that's their private property and it's their dog, so that dog can bark as long as they want, even if it disturbs and diminishes your quality of life. We don't allow that for a number of different things, whether it's smell. I don't think that you can make the argument, well, we should allow residents to do whatever they want in their backyard, because we don't have that standard anywhere else. This is not taking away anyone's liberties. This is not trying to kick anyone out of Whitehall or some attack on a subset of people. I was told that this is somehow an attack on low-income people of Whitehall. Well, I think that's interesting that it's the low-income people of Whitehall apparently that own 4 campers, 3 boats, and 2 cars. I think this is a quality of life issue. I think we're doing it for the right reasons. I think you heard from our code enforcement officers a number of weeks ago that told you that this problem is not getting better, but getting worse. And while I understand it's a small percentage of the residents that are abusing this problem, my question to council would be, at what percentage is it too many? If it's 10% today, what if it's 30% in 4 years? What if it's 50% in 6 years? Because this isn't a problem that gets better because we allow it to continue. It's gotten worse over the last 2 years. It's only going to get worse as we continue to allow this minimum standard to not be raised. That is the only report that I have this evening, Mr. President. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Director of Public Service, Van Gregg?
No,
is
that's
with us
still
this
me.
evening?
He's the safety director.
Our Safety Director, thank you. And Treasurer Steve Quinzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no official report this evening.
And there have been no officials' reports filed in the council office since our last meeting. Under communications, petitions, and claims, we have 3 items this evening. The first item is notice from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control for a new C1 liquor permit for 4352 East Broad Street, LLC, 4352 East Broad Street, Whitehall, Ohio, 43213. Second item is minutes for the January 9th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. And the final item is the agenda for the February 26th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. At this time, would the clerk please call the roll on whether each member of council was given a copy of each item of legislation listed on the agenda prior to the meeting and including any add-on legislation?
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Heck?
Yes.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Thank you. Under third reading, we've got no legislation this evening. Under second reading, we have ordinance 002-2020, which will be title only, which is amending section 903.32, parking of motor vehicle on lawns and prohibited to include rear yards. Ordinance number 003-2020, also title only, amending section 1126.13, limitation of parking in residential districts to add a lot maximum for impervious parking area. We then have ordinance 004-2020, also being read by title only this evening, amending section 1123.10C, titled General Commerce District Special Permit Uses in the Codified Ordinances of the City of Whitehall to add brewery and distillery facilities. And our fourth item under the second reading, also going title only, is ordinance 005-2020, amending 1125.17D, storage of garbage at non-residential structures of the codified ordinances of the City of Whitehall. Under first reading, we have ordinance 006-2020, which will be title only, and will be referred to the Planning Commission for their February 6th meeting, and a public hearing that will be held on March 3rd, 2020. And that is amending the zoning map attached to Chapter 1122 of the 1970 Codified Ordinances of the City of Whitehall, Ohio, as subsequently amended, allowing a special permit under 1123.10C37 to allow Buzzsaw Brewing Company to operate a brewery facility on a property located at 951A and B, Robinwood Avenue, parcel 090-000-311-00, property owned by Charter Properties. Next, under first reading, we have ordinance 007-2020, and this is approving and making supplemental appropriation of $500,000 from unappropriated monies into the OPWC Issue 2 Fund 309 to the North Yearling Road Improvement Loan Expense Account 309-000-54500 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 007-2020 and move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
Thank you. I've had a motion by Mr. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Morrison to suspend the rules. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Peck?
Yes.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Thank you. I would now accept a motion for adoption.
Mr. President, move
Mr.
to
Bailey.
adopt.
Second.
A motion has been made by and seconded for the adoption. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Peck?
Yes.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Thank you. The ordinance has been adopted. Next, we have Resolution 002-2020, resolving to approve the then and now certificates and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Resolution 2-2020 and move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
Thank you. Resolution 002-2020 has been brought forward by Mr. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Peck?
Yes.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution is passed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay. Move for adoption and seconded by Mr. Bailey, Mr. Rodriguez. Please call roll.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Peck?
Yes.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution 002-2020 has passed. Our last item this evening is Resolution 003-2020, and this is authorizing the mayor to apply for and accept a bulletproof vest partnership with BVP grant, make a supplemental appropriation and $750 to the 2019 bulletproof vest expense account, 267.000.53,000, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Resolution 3-2020 and move for the suspension of all rules.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. There's been a motion to introduce and suspend the rules by Councilperson Coniston, second by Mr. Cantor. Any discussion on the motion? Clerk, please call roll.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Peck?
Yes.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Okay, motion for adoption by Councilperson Coniston, seconded by Mr. Cantor. Please call roll.
Coniston?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Peck?
Yes.
Morrison?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
The resolution has passed. Now it's time for our second poll public of the evening. Again, just a reminder, if you'd like to come forward, please state your name and address. You'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good evening. Gerald Dixon, 3877 Donny Street. 2 weeks ago, I stood before you for the first time in over a year to address legislation I felt is wrong. I was told by the new President of Council that a second address on this topic was disallowed, and so for the first time in 11 years, I was told to sit down. Historically here, when it was determined 3 minutes wasn't enough to adequately say what needed to be said on a topic, it was deemed fine to use the second poll public to finish one's thoughts. Never was there a time, while the rule may well have always been present, was it ever enforced. Of course, Mr. Potter simply doing what you voted for him to restrict could be said to just be doing his job. My concerns, though, lie underneath this. It's no secret that Mr. Potter headed up the political campaign which raised nearly $40,000 to get elected officials third terms in office. That effort, which the mayor helped with, and which she and some on council benefited from. So too, she promoted him for the office he now holds, with literature paid for by her political committee. As well, we know that Mr. Potter heads the WCIC, an agency of the city, and have seen him at various city events. As such, he is an associate of Mayor Mackert's in their mutual efforts to change the face of Whitehall. This gives rise then to the natural assumption of a bias between Council President Potter and the mayor, given any mutual personal civic vision they seemingly share, the power of which, given conflicts of interest, lends a capacity to blur the lines between their duty and obligation towards citizens and the bias of the efforts of their shared work. So then, given all the mutuality they bring with them to the people's government, seemingly unaware of these conflicts' damage and erosion to the public trust, the Maggard administration introduces legislation which purports to increase property values, that which falls into line with the work of the mayor and Mr. Potter. Vocal do-gooder critical citizen steps forward and speaks out publicly against this legislation, claiming it infringes on rights. Council President Potter then invokes a rule, unseen by me, which stops the speech. Given this line of actions then, along with conflicts of interest present, inherently give rise to justified suspicion. Given the time, energy, and money invested in his and the mayor's vision, coupled with his new position helming the People's Council, it is no stretch of the imagination to feel then that his power as council president could be implemented to squelch any and all citizen dissent which runs counter to his and their works. That scenario, which is both an alarming and credible concern. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Bailey.
to Mr. Dixon's point, in our rules of order for council, we did in fact include and vote on and pass a clause that an individual could only speak one time on a certain topic, but still that individual would have two opportunities to speak on something else of his choice. And to Mr. Dixon's defense, on our website where it lists rules of council, that was omitted, and I think in your paperwork, and I forget the section, and
Section 8.
yeah, it does state that.
It wasn't omitted, it was not.
It's not on the website,
Right.
and that
I
we need
found
to
that.
correct that.
I concur, yes, Article 8, Section C.
But a bit of history, at the time we passed that, and some of us were here then, we did remove the need for an individual before he spoke to fill out a card and identify a subject he wished to speak on, and at that time, it could be denied and his name not called. So when we did continue this limitation on the number of times you could speak on a certain subject, we did remove the need for signing that card, which I thought was a good idea.
Thank you.
But we do need to get that corrected on the website.
Agreed. That will be addressed. Does anybody else wish to? I'll take that as a yes.
Claire Carter.
All right. I got something here I think
Jim.
is, it's Jim Graham, 644 Greenwood Road, Whitehall, 43213. I have something here I think it's important that we enter into the record. The January 27th issue of the Dispatch reported that the median sales price of a home for sale in Whitehall jumped 16.7% from 2018 to 2019. That was following a 14.95% jump in 2018. In fact, we outpaced all other Central Ohio cities in home price appreciation for the second year running.
And that's great for the residents, and it's attractive to those considering moving. Let me back up here. The reason that was stated in the article is because the area has changed and it's affordable. And that's great for the residents, and it's attractive to those considering moving here, as well as those who are wishing to sell their home. I want you to consider this scenario carefully as I describe it to you. A resident decides to put their home up for sale to take advantage of the increased property values. Several prospective buyers look at the property, and they're excited at the prospect of moving into a community that is on the move, and one where it seems that their investment will be a good one. Until they go into the backyard, where there are multiple vehicles, a boat or camper, that appear to be in questionable condition in the neighbor's yard. Not on a driveway, not parked on gravel, not parked on concrete, but in the grass. Put yourself in the position of the seller who has taken care of their property but doesn't get the fair value of their price because the city has failed to live up to its part of the bargain for residents. Or the buyer that thought they had found the perfect house in a city they heard was changing to meet the needs of its residents and was also affordable. So what would you do as the owner, knowing the condition of the neighbor's backyard is hurting the sale of your home? I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd drop the price to sell because the city I live in, I feel, would have failed me. What would you do as the buyer? Again, I'll tell you what, I'm going to look somewhere else, just like most people would. All I can ask is that you strongly consider passage of Ordinance 220 to protect everybody's property values. And after seeing the presentation that was put on here tonight, I dare any of you to come up with one legitimate reason why you can't vote in favor of passage. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward.
Philip Stoughton, 89 Collingwood, Whitehall. I'm a fourth generation owner of my property. My great grandparents built it, my grandparents lived there, my dad lived there all his life. Grandpa was a fireman, served on the Whitehall Fire Department. I got pictures of town and country being built. Lived there all my life. Well, a little bit of theft goes on, stuff gets stolen out of my yard. You know, hey, I have a camper, I have a boat, I have 2 children, 19 years old. One comes home from college. I got multiple cars. Yeah, my lot's not wide, but it is a 700 foot deep. You know, the backyard you open up, I mow everybody's yard from Doty to Broad Street. Don't ever blink an eye at it, because it's like a field. I grew up with the trees being this big. Now they're overgrown and big. But guess what? I still mow it like my grandpa did. Take care of everybody. I come to the city one day. Walked in. Hey, I'd like to build a pole barn to put my boat, my camper, all this stuff, so my stuff couldn't get stolen. My rototiller got stolen. My push mower got stolen. What could I do? Hey, no problem. No stipulation. You bring me the plans, you can build it. I come here, I asked to build the thing, I blew a plot plan, had everything set up. Well, the city says, nope, we don't feel it's in our best interest for you to improve your property. So, my thing is, you guys are saying we can't park stuff outside, you can't park it in, you can't park your camper, you can't park this, but when I asked so I can build a building, put it in, so I have a second garage, that's what they classified it. I was going to use it as a pole building for storage, not for a garage. I was told it wasn't in the city's best interest. Why? Because I want to improve my property. I want to have the best looking house on the street. I want my neighbors to be able to walk outside and say, there's not a camper sitting there. There's not a boat sitting there. But at this time, you know, I think the amendment of passing that is disagreeable. You know, if I can't build a building to store my stuff, why should I be penalized to be told, A, build a fence around my yard so nobody can see the stuff, or move? Basically, that's what I was told. If I don't like it, get out. I feel that when I came to the city thing and paid my $88 to get a zoning permit, awarded, I didn't feel I was fairly met. I was a little upset. I'm still upset. I mean, I'm sorry about the way I see it, but you know, I have all this stuff in my thing. I want to clean it up. I want to do something, but the city will not work with me. So for me to agree on doing certain things, hey, I think we all need to work together on stuff. You know, I should be able to come down and ask for a building permit. I should have more than just one time to let things know, to get stuff cleaned up. Not just, it's not our best interest.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Philip Stoughton.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come address council?
Patrick Legg Jr., live at 95 Collingwood Avenue. I happen to be Philip's neighbor. Again, I'm a third generation in this house. It was my grandparents' house. My parents owned it. Now I own it. Whitehall's all I've ever known. It's been where I've been born and raised. I mean, I don't know any other town or how any other thing would work. This house is all I have. I know I'm not the perfect model citizen. I don't keep everything 100% spotless. But some of the vehicles that I have had at my home aren't in the grass. They are in gravel. My driveway's always been gravel. In fact, between my house and my neighbor's house, it actually used to be a horseshoe driveway of gravel. And my grandparents and his grandparents had some disagreements years ago and kind of did away with that one with all grass, whatever it was. But Philip and I, we've been best friends pretty much all our lives. He grew up there with his grandparents, I grew up with my grandparents. And we try to work together and help each other out. And as far as his pole barn being built, I feel that he should be able to do that. He doesn't operate a business from his home. He has a place of business where he, condones business from at a different location. These are things that he's trying to store to keep his personal belongings safe. With the fence in the backyard, our backyards, I have children, he has children, all our neighbors have children. And our yards are wide open. And we have big parties. We have bounce houses, and we invite all the neighbors to come over and join us. We have cookouts together, pony rides, a petting zoo. I mean, we are a community. The 5, 6, 7 houses right there next to us all have children, and we all try to work together and enjoy time with each other. And to put a fence up is going to separate that from us. And I don't agree with that. I don't think putting a fence up around the property is the best thing. I think he should be allowed to be able to put up a barn so that he can store his belongings in. That he does donate his time, his money, labor, whatever you want to consider it, to mow everyone's backyards. I just feel that he should be able to do these things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to come forward? Okay, hearing nothing, we will then move on to the Community Date Board.
Who would like to start? Me? Oh.
Why don't you start,
I'd like to do the community day board, so.
This Saturday, February 8th, over at the YMCA, they will be playing Toy Story 4 from 4 to 6. I'm sure there's more.
There is. First off, congratulations to our Lady Rams basketball team. They had a phenomenal season. Tied for, they're in first place right now in the league. They're playing at Bexley tonight. They're the number 3 seed in the tournament. They play Monday night at home against Linden McKinley. The winner will play against Licking Valley on Friday, February 2nd. So see some people out there. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Go Rams.
Does anybody else have anything for Community Date Board?
Oh, February 2nd.
No.
February 2nd?
Seven.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Seven.
Monday and Friday. Not a problem. First thing that happens. Oh, I understand.
You're
Gotcha.
chewing gum.
Dates happen.
Right.
Okay, if there's nothing further, Community Date Board, poll council. Karen?
That would be me.
That would be you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you for sharing your stories, and we definitely appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Cantor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank everybody for watching and tuning in. Thank everybody for calling me. I greatly appreciate that, for the really good response. Mr. Lake, Mr. Stone, I thank you. I'm familiar with your area, very familiar with it. I greatly appreciate you coming in. Sometimes it's hard to come in and talk, and I know that. So we're going to talk about it again Tuesday, and we're going to go from there. So I thank you all very much for coming tonight. Hi, girls. Dad loves you. I'm done, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Head?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, everybody that came in and spoke tonight or just came in to hear what was going on in council. Thank you, everybody that tuned in from home, and that's really all I have tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to thank everyone for coming in and voicing their views on varied subjects. Thank everyone for watching, and everyone have a good week.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome back, Potter. I just wanted to say that. I missed you last week.
It's an age thing.
I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight. And I really want to thank Director Woodruff for his presentation, although he isn't here, but hopefully he watches Facebook, because I'm sure he wants to check that out. But I appreciate the information that he shared with us. And Philip, love to follow up on your situation and maybe understand it a little better. It sounds like some of the terminology is a problem. A pole barn is definitely not allowed, but a garage is. So maybe help me understand that. And to close, I'd just like to congratulate Joanna on her position with the schools. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good to see a mix of folks here. Dave, how you doing? And good comments this evening. Thank you all so much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Elmore?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the residents that spoke today. It takes a lot of courage to come up and speak, and I appreciate you and your input. This is Black History Month, and I have a few things that I'd like to comment regarding that. With it being Black History Month, moral courage is the courage it takes to take action for moral reasons despite the risk of adverse consequences. Courage is required to take action when one has doubts or fears about the consequences. Moral courage, therefore, involves deliberation and careful thought. Moral courage enables leaders to live with integrity, act to uphold the loyalty to those that are under their authority, and to execute their duties with confidence. Moral courage is equally important to leadership in business, nonprofit, political, and any other type of organization. Moral courage is seen in individuals who, when they uncover the unethical dilemma, explore a course of action based on their ethical values and follow through with the decisions as to the right course of action, regardless of the possible consequences this course of action might present. February is the month we celebrate Black history, but I believe Black history has been the history of this nation. History is his story. I am reminded of the 4 Black students that exhibited moral courage in the face of systemic racism, or Rosa Parks, who took a stand on the bus, or Frederick Douglass, an American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman, or the Ward family from Whitehall, their contribution to this Whitehall community. However, systemic racism existed 400 years ago and is still present today. When my husband and I are told to go back where we came from, I'm perplexed. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. With with an ancestry line of kings, queens, hunters, gatherers, and warriors. My husband and I chose to move to Whitehall. And I'm glad it's not the sentiment of most Whitehall residents in this community. But I believe we are faced with this crossroad and/or conflict of acting with moral courage. If we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. So this month and every day, challenge yourselves to speak up, be courageous, and exhibit moral courage. Dr. Martin Luther King said in his speech, "I feel like I'm leading my people into a burning building." He stated that because he was conflicted in his spirit with the charge that he had been leading in the civil rights movement. Don't let history repeat itself. Learn from it and stand up with moral courage. And in closing, I'll take a hashtag from Amelia Sykes, a minority leader, down at the State House of Legislation. Hashtag we belong here. Thank you.
Ms. Elmore, thank you very much.
Thank
Very,
you.
very inspirational. Well said. I too would like to thank everyone for coming out this evening, sharing your feelings, thoughts, and concerns, and I'd also like to thank the folks that are tuning in at home. I have nothing further, and with that, I'll accept a motion.
Mr. President, move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, have a motion adjourned by Mr. Bailey, second by Mr. Rodriguez. Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Trying to get you in there, Laura.
Coniston.
Yes.
Cantor.
Yes.
Heck.
Yes.
Morrison.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Nice.